What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back in the video. Bit of a fun one for you all today. Those of you who don't know, I have a sentiment scraper on the website. All those results are posted there. It basically searches Reddit for articles about each player, gathers sentiment about them, and that's sentiment both on the article, how that's written, and in the comments as well. Sentiment is really just how positively or negatively users talk about a player. So it pulls all that together, puts it into a score, and then ranks the top 250 players in my rankings just based off how the community feels about them. That can be really useful when you're thinking about the trade market. Who are people in general really high on versus low on? But it's also just kind of good to know because people who rank highly in sentiment are just more likely to be reached for in drafts. If a ton of people really like a player, it's more likely you're in a draft with someone who wants to reach for them. Reverse is opposite. For players who are ranked lowly in sentiment, it's just less likely you get into a draft where a bunch of people want them and someone takes them ahead of ADP. So I ran the model overnight. We're going to take a look at the results today, both highest and lowest. So I'm going to look at the top two and bottom two at each position. And we're just going to talk about, if we like them, if we don't like them, maybe why their sentiment is higher or lower. So sit back, hit the like button, and let's get things started off with the players ranked lowest in sentiment. Wide receiver. Two wide receivers ranked lowest in sentiment are Devonta Adams and DeAndre Hopkins. Now, I would say I'm relatively neutral on Adams. I still think he's a great player. I think the negative sentiment probably comes with situation, right? I mean, he's on the Raiders. We don't really know who's going to win the quarterback job. I think it's going to be Minshew, but probably not going to have elite quarterback play. Obviously, getting up there in age, typically we see a drop off with wide receivers. So I think it's like, those things kind of mixing together. People are like, not an inspiring pick. Because also people like the shiny new toy, right? Everyone likes these second round wide receivers where it's like, ooh, this guy could be great, that guy could be great. And obviously when you have, younger players, you do have a little bit more of that potential of like having a really, really good season where they break out far from what they were before. I guess it is relatively unlikely that Adams goes out there and has like the best season of his career with Gardner Minshew, in his oldest season, obviously. So I understand the negative sentiment, but I will say when I'm sitting there in round two, I'm not passing on Adams because of his age. I think his ADP is correct. I think his general industry ranking is correct. So if he does become a top player in the rankings, top player by ADP, I personally have not hesitated in drafting him. DeAndre Hopkins, I hesitate a little bit more. So one interesting thing with the Titans is they are expected to be pass heavy. And I know it's like, I've talked about this in other videos. It kind of does become a situation where it's like, see it to believe it, because for like a decade, and this is, even before they had Derrick Henry, they've just historically been a very run heavy team. So to flip the script on that and be one of the most pass heavy teams just feels unlikely, but everything they're saying indicates that they are going to be a pass heavy team. So we'll see there. But it's also, a similar situation. It's like he's getting up there in age. Will Levis, we don't know how good he is. I mean, he's probably not that good, but he's probably not that bad. He has some level of upside. He's still young. I would say he has more upside than Gardner Minshew, but also probably more downside than Gardner Minshew as well. Because really, I don't think Minshew is like that bad of a quarterback. But anyways, yeah, I think that's kind of driving the sentiment down. He's just also not a player I go after a lot. He does go in a range where there's a decent amount of wide receivers that I feel pretty good about. It doesn't happen often where I get there and I'm like, you know what? DeAndre Hopkins. It's more like if DeAndre Hopkins falls a little bit, he is the top player in the rankings. I look around and it's like, it's not really a range I want to draft. The running back position, we kind of missed out on the elite tight ends. If that kind of happens, all the wide receivers I like are off the board, then I'll go after DeAndre Hopkins. I have no problem drafting him. He's just not someone that I go after, so kind of agree with sentiment being down. Running back, bottom two in sentiment, Ezekiel Elliott and Alvin Kamara. Probably another age thing that's going to kind of be a trend, although not at the tight end position. But a little bit of a trend. Obviously, Zeke grades out with one of the worst sentiments among all players. I mean, listen, it's Zeke, right? Like, he has been highly inefficient for years now. You know, he is not someone I've considered. I have drafted probably every player potentially multiple times at this point. I mean, I'm well over 50 drafts in this season. I will likely do around 200 paid drafts. I would be surprised if I had more than 1 or 2 shares of Zeke, and I currently have not gotten Zeke on a team. I think I have him ranked 2 rounds behind ADP. Like, it's just not going to happen. I'm not going to end up with him. I understand the people who want to be like, well, he's going to get touches. I don't know. I still think they could bring in another running back. I still just do not believe he could possibly be their 1A. How could you look at him and think that it's a good idea to give him touches on a team that wants to win? So I'm out. I agree with the sentiment there. But if you want to go after him, go for it. It's just, I'd rather go Dowdle or just avoid the situation and hope that, running back gets cut. Maybe someone like Damian Pierce, maybe someone like Khalil Herbert gets traded to them. Someone like Miles Sanders, that's a possibility. So it's like, not all these players getting cut or traded, but there's still people out there that could really ruin that situation. Then Alvin Kamara. I don't mind Kamara. I don't think he's going early enough to where it's like, you got to jump ship. I don't think he's going to be overly efficient. I am worried, genuinely worried about Taysom Hill this season. It seems like this new staff loves him. They want to feature him. The hope was a new staff would come in and our annoyance with Taysom Hill would go away. It'd be like, okay, you're a thing of the past. You're not siphoning off all these touchdowns and everything. It seems like, honestly, his role might expand from what we've seen. So again, with him, if you are in a league where he can be tight end, he actually grades out in that general Dallas Goedert range, which is absolutely crazy. If you're in a league where it's quarterback, he's a quarterback. You're not going to be playing him at the quarterback position, even if he's going to be more involved than he was. But yeah, that's a little bit of a concern. Obviously, you have the concern with Kendre Miller. I think he's a talented player. I think he can take carries. But listen, you're getting Alvin Kamara at a pretty good discount this season. We know Kendre Miller. We know Jamal Williams, if he's still going to be on the team. They can't catch. So Kamara's job in the pass catching role is absolutely locked in. That is not going anywhere. He's going to do great in that area. It just comes down to, can he get lucky with touchdowns and can he keep the red zone job? That's probably the biggest thing. I think he will, but if he lost that to Kendre Miller and you've got Taysom Hill, now, we can only project him for a couple of touchdowns. That would actually really hurt. So watch news there, I guess, but I don't think you need to be hyper avoiding Alvin Kamara. Also not a player I end up with a lot, but it's not because I'm hyper avoiding him. I think, being down on sentiment makes sense, but the ADP is down as well. So it kind of goes with that. I don't think he's a horrible pick this season. One that I'm concerned about though. And if you ask me him or Kendre Miller at cost, I would rather wait multiple rounds and grab Kendre Miller, a lot of rounds, grab Kendre Miller. Tight end. Dallas Goedert and Dalton Kincaid. That one was actually very shocking. He was very low in sentiment. Dallas Goedert, I feel like it's just it's such an uninspiring pick. When you're drafting a tight end in this general spot, you're like, okay, can you win me something, right? You look at David Njoku and you're like, well, you're an athletic freak. You had an awesome end to last season. You're clearly hyper athletic, someone they should be featuring. I get it, right? You look at Evan Ingram in the same general range. You're like, okay, well, you could rack up 1 million receptions and you've got that upside that Calvin Ridley's gone now. Maybe those receptions, really start to get going and maybe the red zone involvement kind of kicked up. You can see it, right? And then you can obviously see it with all the early round tight ends. You look at Dallas Goedert and you're like, well, now they have Saquon. They're going to have Hurts running in for every touchdown. They've got AJ Brown. They've got Devonta Smith. And you're like, Dallas Goedert's good, but what's he going to do? He's probably going to roughly return value to slightly underperform. He's going to be fine. You're going to be forced to play him every week because you're definitely not streaming tight end over Dallas Goedert. But most weeks you're going to be like, oh, thank you for your 4 for 40 and your occasional touchdown. So I feel like that's kind of why people are down on him, because it's very difficult to truly think about an elite ceiling for Dallas Goedert. And so not someone I've been going after. A lot of times he'll fall a full round and I'll be there needing a tight end and it's still difficult to click his name. So I'm kind of out on him too this season. But then Dalton Kincaid, I don't get this one. Unless there's some bit of news that I haven't heard about with Kincaid. He is very clearly going to have a large role on the Bills offense. They have a billion targets that they need to be filling, and they got to fill it with Keon Coleman, who I don't believe is a true X receiver, with Curtis Samuel, who I think is good, but is obviously not going to go out there and command 150 targets. Like, I think they're going to center their offense around the ground game, around Josh Allen, just being Josh Allen, doing Josh Allen things. But Dalton Kincaid, I think that's going to be their most targeted player, and you get that at tight end. Like, I don't see it. So I think he's a great pick this season. I would not be shying away from drafting him. I don't know why the sentiment is super low. Quarterback. Two lowest sentiment are Deshaun Watson and Aaron Rodgers. I feel like you should be able to figure out why these two people the community doesn't like in general. I don't know that it's as much doesn't like in fantasy as it is don't like the person, the human being, and talking negatively about them. I will say I'm not sure I've drafted more than 2, maybe 3 shares of Watson, and it only comes when I've kind of just like begun a Cleveland stack. Like if I've just like, drafted Amari Cooper, and then I went after Nick Chubb, and I'm like, well, I need a quarterback, and I'm kind of betting on the Browns here. Maybe I'll grab Watson super late because he does sometimes go super late. I've seen him go at like, 150, 160, which is really, really late if you still need a quarterback at that point. But not someone I'm really targeting. I understand the upside. It's just, it's been a long time since Watson's actually been good, like a very, very long time. He just might not be that great anymore. I understand that it was like the injuries last season. It was all this time off, but like, until you prove it, there's so many good quarterbacks. Like there's an unbelievable amount of quarterbacks, probably like 15 to 17, where I would be perfectly comfortable leaving even like a 1 quarterback league, not even talking about best ball, just a straight up 1 quarterback redraft league. There's like 15 to 17 quarterbacks I'd be totally fine leaving with, maybe upwards of like, 17 or 18. So for me to go after someone who I just don't know talent-wise, I just don't know situation-wise, is really going to move the needle for me. To me, it's a no. But Aaron Rodgers, I would be fine going after, especially, my goodness, I think I drafted him at 175 the other day, which is just crazy. I think people in their minds are like, oh, is he not going to play this season because of this like unexcused absence? But like, it was an absence that like they knew about, right? Like he's supposed to be there, but like they knew he wasn't going to be there. I don't know. This is just Aaron Rodgers. It's just Aaron Rodgers doing Aaron Rodgers things. Like this is who he is. He'll show up to training camp. It's all going to be fine. It's a great offense. He's got great weapons. I understand that the last time we saw him before, of course, the year of the injury, was probably one of his worst seasons of his career. He's still Aaron Rodgers. Like if you put him out there with Garrett Wilson, with Breece Hall, with a great defense, he's going to be highly efficient. He's going to be good in fantasy, especially given that you're getting him at this point on average at like pick 160, pretty good discount. I have been going there a lot. On Underdog, I would say in a 1 quarterback league, my preference is still to get one of the elite quarterbacks. But if I had to double dip on like, Kirk Cousins and Aaron Rodgers, or Jared Goff, Tua, someone like that, and Rodgers, I'd still be fine doing that as well. So that's lowest. Those are players going, having ranked at the lowest sentiment. Let's talk about the ones with the highest sentiment. Wide receiver, Josh Downs and Dontavian Wicks. I'm actually very surprised with Downs because I know mixed results on AD Mitchell, but I do know a lot of people really, really like AD Mitchell. I know pretty much everyone likes Pittman. I mean, I've never really met someone who's like, Pittman stinks. Like everyone just kind of understands that maybe Pittman's not a top 7 receiver, but he's a good receiver, right? He's a great player. So I thought given like there's Jelani Woods hype out there, I think everyone understands that, Jonathan Taylor's a pretty good running back, that Anthony Richardson is, maybe someone who isn't going to have as high a volume passing. Like, I think he's going to throw the ball more than people think, but he's not going to go out there and air the ball 40 times a game, right? I think kind of given all that, when I saw Josh Downs ranking number 1 in sentiment, I actually believe among all players, like it's just like very positive about Josh Downs. I don't know. I was surprised to see it. So maybe you guys aren't as surprised as I am, but I like him. I liked him as a player last year. Obviously underperformed, but, what are you really going to expect when, your starting rookie quarterback who you've been kind of building around goes down? You kind of have a backup come in there. You're in your rookie season. Like, there was a lot of factors there to where it's not shocking that as a rookie slot receiver, the backup quarterback, he didn't go off last season. Underlying metrics were certainly fine, though. Again, I still really like him as a player, really like him as a prospect. He does not have an elite ceiling. So Josh Downs just can't be a league winner. Even if there's an injury, like even if like Pittman got hurt and AD Mitchell kind of underperformed, like I still just don't think there's a path to Downs being a league winner. But that's fine. You don't need to draft every single player in your team to be a league winner. I think he's still a quality player. Someone that maybe in like full PPR formats is a little bit better. But for where he's going, he's going, on Underdog, pick 120, 125. In a redraft league, you can push that probably to like pick 140. You're getting him really late as probably your like 5th or 6th wide receiver. I think given the talent, given the situation on what I think is going to be a really good team, I like him a lot. I would definitely be drafting him. But again, I was just surprised to see him have the highest sentiment of anyone. Then Dontavian Wicks, I am not surprised to see this at all. He has been steamed up in drafts. I still get him a ton because another player I really like the talent on. I'm a little bit concerned because, we still haven't even gotten into like true summer, right? True summer is mid-July. That's when camps come back, when we're getting actual reports from teams, when the pads go on, dudes are getting hit. And when you get like reports there, skyrocketing players ADP, that's when you can see someone jump, around in like 2 days. We're still at the point where there's kind of like a smaller community actually drafting right now. So ADP can only move up so much, especially given where he's going. Like he's not going to jump into the 5th round or anything. But if we ever get a report that it's like Dontavian Wicks is crushing camp, that he's probably going to overtake, like let's just say Romeo Doubs, that's the person I would project him to overtake. And like he's going to be out there. Let's just say he's going to be out there every 2 wide receiver set. Let's say that is reported. Oh my goodness, like his ADP is going to just absolutely skyrocket. So kind of hoping we don't get that so we can get him cheaper. But I agree with sentiment here. I love Wicks. Running back, top 2 in sentiment, Bucky Irving and Chase Brown. I don't know that either of these two are shocking, but top 2 in sentiment, wouldn't have predicted this. You give me 20 guesses, I would not have predicted these 2 players. Bucky Irving also, because he's kind of a polarizing player. Like not everyone likes Bucky Irving. I like him, so I agree with the sentiment. I think he's a very talented running back. He's just smaller, right? And that's why a lot of people are off him, because we don't typically look for breakout running backs that are his size, especially, on a team where, a bigger back would have been someone we were more excited about, because it's not like Rachaad White is some huge back. So if they brought in, a talented, bigger running back, and we were like, ooh, are they going to take the goal line job? Are they going to kind of move Rachaad White into the pass catching role? Bucky Irving, it's like, I don't want to say the skill set completely overlaps, but a lot of it does. Like Rachaad White excels in the receiving game. Honestly, my initial take is that they kind of view Bucky Irving as a better pure runner. The problem is I don't know that he can really handle like a full workload. So could it be a situation almost like Tyjae Spears and Tony Pollard, where it's like they view these two interchangeably? They're kind of bringing them on and off the field as like both 1Bs basically. Maybe that's being a little bit too wishful thinking, but honestly, Bucky Irving is the reason I haven't gotten as much of Rachaad White. I like Rachaad White as a player, but I think he has obvious flaws, and I think that, Bucky Irving has the potential to get a decent amount of touches, and Rachaad White was only really great in fantasy last season because he had, the second most touches of any player in the NFL. If those go down, I'll be concerned, but yeah, I like Bucky Irving. I like him as a sleeper, but only as a sleeper because, again, upside is only so high given his size. Then Chase Brown, like him, I personally think that Zach Moss is just the better target between the two of them, but that just comes down to how you view the skill sets. Brown goes later in draft, so Moss is going to go first. I just think Brown is basically going to be a slightly better version of what he was last season. He was definitely better than I thought he was last season, better than I thought he was going to be. I thought he was more just going to be like a pure change of pace back, but like Mixon's still a quality running back, and like Chase Brown was earning touches over Mixon at times. It's just like he never actually got that many touches, and I'm not overly convinced that he's someone that's going to have, 12, 13 touches a game. I think he might just get like a few more than last season, and they might really rely on Zach Moss. But who knows? If Zach Moss just goes out there and kind of stinks it up and is just like mediocre, Chase Brown obviously has upside on the Bengals offense. Like, it's a very, very good offense, very good for running back production as well, just because, they're going to score a ton of touchdowns, and they could easily have games where multiple touchdowns come on the ground, easily have games where running backs rack up receptions, and like who's stacking the box when you've got now T. Higgins signing that franchise tag along with Jamar Chase. Like, no one's stacking the box against that team. So, it's a good situation. I would say I'm very surprised that Chase Brown is highest in sentiment. Not someone I would say I've drafted a ton of this season. Moving on to tight end. Travis Kelce, Ben Sinnott. I think I'm saying the last name right, but tell me if I'm not saying it there. I think the sentiment around Kelce is high because, one, people just like him as a player, so I think they just talk positively about him. But number two, just because, this is a season where we've gotten him significantly later in ADP than normal. In prior years, you want Travis Kelce, you might have to spend a first-round pick to get him, and then in years where he kind of went down in ADP, you had to spend a second-round pick. Right now, there's times where you can get him definitely late third round. He goes into the fourth round at times. So I think people are seeing that and they're being like, wait a minute. Like, I can draft Travis Kelce in the fourth round. I could draft like Travis Kelce and Josh Allen while also having a running back and wide receiver one. Like, or if you want to go RB0, you could draft like Garrett Wilson and AJ Brown and then also have Josh Allen and Travis Kelce. Like, people are seeing that and being like, you can make a pretty cool team. I will say there's a reason his ADP is lower this season. It's not just people being like, oh, he can't do it at this age. He has publicly talked about how he is not going to see the snap share we are historically, used to seeing him be out there for. Like, his snaps are going to be reduced. That is going to impact him. If you're on the sideline, you can't score fantasy points. Still has ceiling because it's like, well, when they're in the red zone, it's coming back in the game. So touchdown ceiling is still there. Crunch time, he's still going to be in the game. So it's more just that, like, the overall targets are probably going to drop. But you know what? If you told me at the end of the season, Travis Kelce was the number one tight end, he's had 950 yards and 10 touchdowns, and that ended up being number one, wouldn't be shocked in the slightest. So I agree with people being like, hey, it's kind of cool we can get him this late. It makes sense that we can get him this late. No reason he should be going the top 2 rounds, but I think I understand why the sentiment is high on him. Ben Sinnott, I don't know. I feel like people really like him, but then I will say his ADP has been dropping recently. I think people more just like the situation. They're kind of trying to buy into this, Jayden Daniels hype because, there's obviously some hype around Jayden Daniels, a little bit of hype around this, offense. Could some of this also be kind of playing in with this Ayuk situation? I'm recording this on Tuesday. I believe the video is going to go out on Friday. So I don't know if anything happened kind of in between there. But it's also possible that the scraper was kind of finding some things, talking about maybe Commanders post, talking about the potential for Ayuk. Everyone's hyped up there. And kind of Ben Sinnott just is kind of thrown into that general hype because we were talking about the team, mentioning his name. That's a possibility. Obviously, if Ayuk went to the team, it's actually a pretty big negative for Ben Sinnott. So I think maybe that's playing in there. I basically only get him if I'm taking a stand on the Commanders offense. So if I'm going out there and I drafted McLaurin, I take Jayden Daniels, and I'm like, I think Jayden Daniels takes a step forward. Maybe I want to take a shot on Ben Sinnott later on, saying this offense really gets going, that Ben Sinnott, easily is their tight end one. I don't think that's guaranteed. I'm saying if I was betting on the offense, these are things I'd be thinking about. But on his own, if I were just double dipping at tight end late, I don't know that he's one of the ones I'd go after because he goes a decent chunk ahead of the guys I like. I like Jonnu Smith. I like Noah Fant. So just a general take there. Also, I believe Noah Fant was on one of the polls. I don't remember which poll. I think it was the negative poll though. I think Noah Fant was one of the people with the lowest sentiment, which I don't agree with. Final two, quarterback. High sentiment quarterbacks are J.J. McCarthy and C.J. Stroud. I think Stroud, just everyone should kind of understand. People are really on the Texans offense this season. How could you not be? They've got 3 players who could legitimately be a wide receiver one on a lot of teams. Not every team, obviously, but there's a ton of teams where all of Nico, Diggs, and Tank Dell would be their best wide receiver on the team. You get all of them on one team with Joe Mixon, with a quality tight end, Dalton Schultz. It's a great offense. Stroud, obviously great last season. Like, yeah, I agree. Sentiment should be high around him. And then McCarthy, I think, is just situation, right? I don't draft a ton of him just because, yes, he's got great playmakers. Yes, he's surrounded by talent. It's been a productive offense. It just kind of goes back to, like, there's so many really, really good quarterbacks this season, especially for fantasy, that I kind of get to McCarthy and it's like, yeah, I mean, he makes sense at his ADP. He should be around the, like, you know, quarterback 20, low 20s, that general range. And I think if you were in that range and you needed a quarterback, he's someone I'd go after. If you began a stack on Underdog, I'd finish it off with McCarthy, obviously. But especially in like a one quarterback league, I mean, if your quarterback is in the 20s, like, are you in like a 16 team league? Because then I guess it's fine. But, you know, 8, 10, 12 team league, if you'd be relying on JJ McCarthy, even in Superflex, it still makes me a little bit hesitant. No guarantee he's even like the starting quarterback to start the season. So I get people like the situation. Personally, haven't drafted a ton of him. So if you want to see all these results, you want to see top to bottom, top 250 players, how the industry is viewing sentiment, and then I'll kind of run this probably monthly. Let's be honest, I'm not going to run it a ton because it's more of like a fun to look at kind of thing. But if you want to see the full results, you can see that at my website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. While you're there, you can check out a bunch of other analytic strategy articles that I have, a bunch of projects I've done, you know, analyzing 2 million teams, just analyzing a bunch of things for fantasy in a way that other platforms just do not know how to do. So that'll do it for this one. If you're still watching this far, be sure to leave a like. Make sure to subscribe to the channel as well while you're down there. But I'll catch you guys on the next one.